You know, David started the conference this morning by quoting some of Burning Man's 10 principles. And I think what we saw just after that and right before lunch are some great examples of that. Radical inclusion, radical expression, civic responsibility. And so it's a great segue into our conversation this afternoon with some legendary guests that we have, the founders of Burning Man. I hope you've all had a chance to see the exhibition upstairs on the second floor, City of Dust, the Evolution of Burning Man. It begins to explore the story of how Burning Man evolved through collaborative ritual from humble countercultural roots in San Francisco into the world-class desert conversion, into the world-famous desert convergence that it is today. The exhibition really relies on primary source materials. It's not an art exhibition per se. It includes archives, artifacts, journals, sketches, and notebooks that allow us to trace the civic growth and development of Burning Man's temporary city that arises annually in Nevada's Black Rock Desert. The exhibition also acknowledges some recent changes in Burning Man, its global impact, and how it touches on the exhibition touches on what the future might hold for the Burning Man Project, which is a recently established nonprofit organization. And if you weren't here last night, you didn't hear me mention that most of the artifacts on view in the exhibition are a part of our Center for Art and Environment archive collections. That's a very small fraction of the thousands of materials we have related to Burning Man here in our research center. And we are very, very pleased that the exhibition will travel to the Smithsonian Institution Renwick Gallery next spring. So if you're in Washington, D.C., make sure to stop in to see that. The exhibition simply could not have happened without the collaboration and friendship of the 6 Burning Man co-founders, Larry Harvey, Marian Goodell, Harley Dubois, Crimson Rose, Will Roger Peterson, and Mikel. They're all here with us today, and we're going to hear from them in a little bit. So the way the next session will work, we have Harley Dubois and Mikel who'll give short presentations, and then I'll pass things over to Bill Fox, who's going to bring everyone up on stage for a conversation. So I'd like to introduce Harley. Harley Dubois attended her first Burning Man gathering in 1991 after making a spur-of-the-moment decision to accompany some members of the San Francisco Cacophony Society on a trek to the desert. It did not take long for her to recognize the need to bring planning and organization to the burgeoning community. Early on, she recognized the need for structured theme camp placement, filling in the city design to architect interactive culture. As the city manager of Black Rock City for over 10 years, she oversaw numerous departments, ensuring the citizens of Black Rock City were happy and safe. Harley, we're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to need that. All right. So it's no wonder that the founders are here with you because we all know that Burning Man has been bringing art to the desert for a really long time. So we've been doing art in the environment for a really long time. Many of you are aware that we have a city of 75,000 people that show up for 8 days in the middle of nowhere. And this cultural tectonics concept that's part of the language of this conference is, I think, really relevant to what we're doing. So what is Burning Man? First, let's just take a moment and look at the kind of person that comes to Burning Man. Here are some fun facts about the people. Our age is older than your average festival goer. We have people in their 80s and people that are not even a full year into their lives yet. We have more men than women. We have really educated people who like to come to our event. And we have people that come in from all around the world, and we're a family-friendly event. I want to take just a moment and talk about the mission of Burning Man, because it might be surprising what you're about to read. The mission of Burning Man organization is to facilitate and extend the culture that has issued from the Burning Man event into the larger world. So it's not just about the event in the desert for us anymore. We are definitely, in the cultural tectonic kind of concept, hitting the globe. But first of all, can I see a hand? How many people have been to Burning Man? Quite a few of you. Out of you that just raised your hands, how many people feel comfortable talking about what Burning Man is? A few of you. Okay. I always find that difficult to describe. So I thought I'd just try to tackle it in front of a whole bunch of people. So whenever someone asks me what Burning Man is, the first thing I want to do is find out where they're coming from. So I'll ask them questions like, well, how'd you hear about it? What interests you about it? Or what do you do for a living? Basically, what I'm getting at is, who are you? So I just want to cut to the chase here. I want to ask you all, who are you? Are you a mother or father? Maybe you're an art aficionado. Maybe you're an accountant. Maybe you're a foodie or an exercise enthusiast. Is that really who you are? What would your mother say about you? Is that who you are? Or your grocer? Well, so frankly, we're all defined by the world around us, right? By what people think of us, about our accomplishments in life. And that's how we describe who we are. Well, what if all of that were thrown away and it didn't matter anymore? What if this was an accountant? And this was a millionaire? What if this was an entrepreneur? A gold medalist? Your taxi driver? And what if these were parents? Would that change the way you think about these people? Would it change the way you think about yourself? So I like another concept or two that came out of this conference, shifting ground. That question can shift ground for you internally. Experimental diversity. I think when you start to really think about who you are, you have to face some truths about yourself and face some realities about the world around you. So that's the first question I like to get at, but if I could really have it my way, when somebody asks me what is Burning Man, I would ask them another question as well. I'd ask them, what do you value? See, most of us spend most of our time really worrying about making enough money or managing the money we have so we can live our lives. We spend a lot of time worrying about where we fit in status, what rung are we in the ladder at work, who are we in our community, or if we're lucky enough, we get to think about how much power or authority we have within our communities. And these are really valuable and important things. But if none of that really mattered, if you could just say that's all taken care of, what do you really value? I bet some people in this room would say art, and some people would say environment. What about learning? World peace? So as one of the founders of Burning Man, in my unique role, I got to witness for about 15 years people grappling with this question of, who are you and what do you value? Who am I and what do I value? And what I came to realize and see time and time and time again is that people really want more than having money or the status or the power. They really want to have a meaningful life. They want to contribute. They want a sense of fulfillment. A sense of fulfillment. And they go for that every time over wealth, status, and power. So we all know that Burning Man is a city in the desert, 2 hours north of Reno, in the middle of nowhere. 75,000 people will gather from all around the world, and for 8 days, they'll be prototyping ideas, sharing with their friends, making art, trying experiments in community. And like any other city, people live there, but they live in tents and RVs. Instead of driving cars, they have art cars or bicycles, or they walk. We have a hospital. We have all the things that a city has, including the busiest airport in Nevada for the 8 days that we exist. But I would venture to say that this is not all that Burning Man is. Burning Man is really so much more. I bet some of you are aware of our regional network. We have over 300 people representing us around the world. We have over 80 sanctioned events and hundreds of unsanctioned events. But I'd argue that that's not all that Burning Man is either. It's a permission engine. It's a place where you hear yes more than no. It's a place where you can sort of say, you know, I've always wanted to be, I don't know, an artist. Well, yeah, go ahead. Why don't you be an artist? Try it on for size. Or, I really like that idea. That was super cool, but I think I would do something better. I could, if I made my own art car, maybe I'd make an octopus with articulating arms that shoot flames and seats 10 and has great music. That one's already been done. You'll have to think of something else. But it's a permission engine. It's a place where you can try ideas out. This is my favorite. It's a philosophy. It's a way of walking through the world. It's a way of living your life in the world. So at Burning Man, the rules change a little bit. And what is a success will take a different shape for many, many, many people. Success might be making a huge piece of art with 100 other people who are all there to help you, art that you can touch, play with, and art that isn't made because someone paid you to make it. It's made because you want to make it. Or maybe you're the sort that has that civic bone in your body and you want to be a part of actually making the community work. Thousands of people gather, they bring the content. They say, this is meaningful and I want to share it, and that's what they bring to Burning Man. That's what makes Burning Man, is these volunteers. Or maybe these people that you're one of those people that wants to help keep other people safe. Burning Man has a habit of pushing people to their edge, pushing them beyond their comfort zones. For some people, just being in a dust storm can make their hearts pound. When you can't see your hand in front of your face anymore, it can be terrifying. And when you go through that experience and you come out the other side and you realize you're safe and you're strong and you're sound, you find out something about yourself. And you start finding where your edges are and what's meaningful for you. It's very powerful. It's a place where you can explore your demons, find out your truths. Or maybe you are the builder or part of the build team that makes a temple that is imbued with all of the opportunity for people to mourn that they've been waiting for all year. A place where people spend all week in a spiritual sort of reverence with other people until the night when the temple burns, and 50, 70,000 people will gather and they'll watch it burn in utter silence. Nice sound. This is more subtle, but it's so important. We live in a transactional world, right? We're always looking at someone to get something, or handing somebody money so we get something back, or having a deal with someone to do something, and we know what those transactions are like. What is it like to spend an entire week where you have no transactional exchanges with anybody, where all of your communications are unmediated, unfiltered, unsanitized? They just are what they are. Or I love having the ability to give somebody a gift that might be very simple, but is so special and so in the moment and so perfect for somebody right there and then that they're going to remember it for the rest of their lives. But you're never even going to know their name or ever expect to see them again. Or for some people, it hasn't been since their childhood where they've gotten so swept up in a moment that they lose themselves and find themselves working with other people to make something happen, and only after a period of time realize that they're just one with the moment. Or this is my favorite kind of thing that happens at Burning Man. Every year, 75,000 people leave a place better than they found it simply because it's the right thing to do. So we've been doing this for quite a while, and what we found is that we value people over money. We value your participation over your status, and we value your contribution over your power. As I mentioned, we have really kind of come up with a formula, and it's scalable because we've been growing for so much. We know that it's transferable and it's replicable because people are doing it all around the world. Luckily for me, David already went over the 10 principles with you, so I don't need to go into them. That's the foundation for this formula, but there's 4 other elements that are critical. One is removing people from comforts and from walls that divide and give isolation and separation. The second would be removing the ability to judge someone at a glance or a distance. And the third thing would be giving people meaningful work to do that's powerful, that fills your soul and makes you feel good, and it's fun. And the last thing is adding an opportunity for people to see how they are as an individual in the breadth and scope of the greater whole, ritual and ceremony. Through all of this, people learn about themselves. They come back from their 8 days in the desert, and they might quit their job. They might finally get married or finally get divorced. They might start that business or write that book. They might volunteer for the first time ever. And to me, this is the beauty of Burning Man. This is what Burning Man is. When people get in touch with who they are and what they value, they are able to then better understand who they are in the context of the greater whole, which is our world today. So as this spreads around the world with 10,000 people in South Africa, our fastest growing event in Israel, Midburn, Japan, Spain, South America, all over the world, this is what I think Burning Man is. It's this cultural movement globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Harley. Mikel's long association with San Francisco's underground social and countercultural organizations, especially the Cacophony Society, led to his early and longtime association with Burning Man beginning in 1988. A self-proclaimed prankster whose trickster spirit underlies the soul of the Burning Man organization, Mikel is also an historian whose passion for collecting and interpreting the past helps to inform his vision for the future. And we're also so thankful to Mikel because it's really his personal archive and historical materials that are the foundation of our Burning Man archives in the Center for Art and Environment. So thank you so much for that. Before he comes up, we'd also like to thank and acknowledge Dusty Mikel, who's really been instrumental to the content and editing of his presentation. So Mikel, thanks for being here.
Grazie.
Thank you. Evolution teaches us strength, which comes from unsettling challenge and change. Without environmental stressors, life weakens and culture becomes baroque. Even though we know that stagnation is unhealthy, humans resist change. And we persist in trying to settle and tame the landscape. So, can a settled city ever embody the unsettled? Burning Man hints that it's possible by building change into the system. Being unsettled is one of the keys to our survival. How does a city self-organize in an unsettled place? Burning Man is like an agile coding project in slow motion. Each year we pump out a new version, tweaked by input from the year before. Adaptation is built into the system. Aided by our doctrine of leave no trace, we start with a fresh canvas every year. We remove every last sequin and cigarette butt from the playa before we leave. And then suddenly, as our city appeared, it's gone. When the winter rains come, even the footprints will vanish. How do you create a city from scratch in an unsettled place? What is a city anyway? Here is Mikel Heiser's city. He's answered that question with 100% infrastructure and no people at all. Black Rock City is the opposite. There's virtually no infrastructure, it's just people and their stuff. In fact, those things that look like roads are simply an absence of stuff. Negative space defines us. Impermanence is a feature, not a bug. We are organized around fire. Even our name, Burning Man, denotes rapid change, the rapid oxidization of a sculpture, and the burning away of our default world's culture. Leave your baggage at home. Inside the city, the content iterates constantly. It's either constructing or deconstructing. Camps come and go, structures rise and fall. Landmarks appear and disappear. It's literally a different city every day. We build a city that's inherently unsettling, a place where the city grid is the only constant. How did we get here? First, we leaped from our nest. In 1986, a guy named Larry Harvey called his friend, Jerry James, and said, "Hey, let's build a man and burn him on the beach." What Larry began with a spontaneous idea has become a yearly event. Each year, they improved the man, only to burn it down again. Each year, the figure became more detailed and taller, until it was 40 feet tall, the height that would remain for the next 2 decades. And the crowd attending the ritual burning became ever larger, especially after I got the Cacophony Society involved. This was a group of pranksters who did challenging performance art in the San Francisco area. We started to come, and we started helping to organize the event. But eventually, there were so many people, the authorities found us. In 1990, the cops arrived before we could strike a match, and they said, "You can't do this here. Where's your permit?" In only 4 years, the man had outgrown his rigid urban cradle. It could have been the end, but flexibility was built into the system. If we could change the man himself, why not change the location too? We weren't discouraged. We already knew that destruction was also creation. We just needed a new home, a temporary autonomous zone. So we moved to the Nevada desert, a place outside the reach of urban rules and regulations. Our growth there was explosive, and things nearly flew out of control. We responded by evolving a culture to go with the ritual burning. The Great Basin bears the scars of unstable land masses. Nevada is one of the most geologically active states in the Union. The Black Rock Playa, in particular, is completely unsettled. It's a space defined by violent winds and extremes of temperature. Nothing lives there. Even the insects are just passing through. This is liminal space, a true tabula rasa, or blank slate, upon which you can make a big mark or set a land speed record. We had heard about marvelous things happening on that tabula rasa, things like the Black Rock Invitational Golf Tournament, where the greens were beautifully painted with food coloring, and games of giant croquet using pickup trucks for mallets. 2 months after the event on the beach was shut down by the police, the Cacophony Society newsletter listed a new event. It was called Zone Trip Number 4, Bad Day at Black Rock. Cacophonous had been planning an event in the Black Rock Desert. Now we asked Larry and his homeless sculptor to come along. The distance from San Francisco and the difficulty of surviving in a harsh environment whittled attendance down to about 80 diehard people. When our little caravan pulled off the pavement, I took a stick and I drew a line on the ground. And I said, on the other side of this line, everything will be different. And we all stepped across that line together. And everything was different. Moving to the desert, we suddenly needed a way to live there. But we had much to learn about the desert environment. Our attempt at communal shade structure quickly collapsed as we discovered that parachutes were designed to catch the wind. We spent much of that first day lying under our cars and trucks like lizards to escape the brutal sun. But we evolved, and we made it better the next year. Distances were vast, and the desert proved to be very dangerous to the inexperienced. Mirage made the camp invisible during the day, and it was easy to get lost in the darkness of night. So we placed neon on the man so it could be seen for long distances. It acted as a beacon to find our way home. In the early years on the desert, we mainly iterated our culture, adding and refining new things each year. I drove the first art car to Burning Man. It was actually a kind of conceptual art car. It was created by the Loma Prieta earthquake in '89. I just put a new paint job on it. Also launched a newspaper printed on site with a Macintosh 512 and a dot matrix printer. I started the Black Rock Rangers, a volunteer search and rescue team. Their job was to find people that were lost in the trackless desert and bring them into camp. People began to bring art. Then Lisa Archer and Peter Doty created Christmas Camp, the first theme camp. All weekend long, they were relentlessly playing loud Christmas carol and forcing eggnog and fruitcake on thirsty desert dwellers. By 1994, we had developed a unique culture. We now numbered 2,000 people. Looking out over the camp that year, it was magic. I knew that we were onto something big. The world was coming. What qualifies as a city? In 1995, I started calling the camp Black Rock City. By then, we were the most populous place in Pershing County. We were also beginning to attract some unhelpful attention from the government, and I felt we were due the respect that any other city would receive. Our iterations began to look more civic too. We needed wayfinding technology. Larry designed streetlights and street signs. We had to map ourselves for the Federal Bureau of Land Management that controlled the playa. Our civic spaces evolved. When this didn't work, we tried this. It wasn't much better. But we get to iterate each year. Eventually, we learn to work with the wind. This tensile diaphragm has a slight peak in the center that tends to deflect force and hold everything down. The design was tested in a computer simulation to 120 mile-per-hour winds. It's 34,000 square feet of shade. This is now the civic heart of our city. When the Black Rock Rangers were stressed, they evolved too. Working at the fire perimeter in '94, we had trouble managing the crowd. And I realized I was wearing a confrontational pirate flag on my chest. The Rangers needed an approach, an image that was less confrontational and more persuasive. So we came up with a new logo design that was like the man standing, with the community circled around it, like an embrace. This began to change the nature of rangering in subtle ways. We went from 6 Mad Max warriors, and we morphed into a team of expert mediators that now number over 900. Things were really going well. Then in 1996, city planning became a real survival issue. We didn't have much of a plan back then. We kept the area near the man open, but it was really just a circling of wagons. Our main attempt at city planning had been to move that annoying new rave camp a full mile north of Center Camp to separate the loud sound area from the general population. But that created an attractive nuisance outside of town that required driving back and forth all night long. One night, someone ran over 2 tents, seriously injuring 3 people. Burning Man had become a city and would need to evolve in ways that would allow management like a city. Disagreement between the founders flared up. Rules, boundaries, and planning were abhorrent to some of our organizers. Was it time to discontinue this experiment, or time to iterate again? We were still reeling from the difficulties of '96 when Wired magazine put us on their cover and notified the world that Burning Man was the new American holiday. We were hitting the big time. So we weathered that conflict and iterated our management team, and Burning Man continued. That orange bar is our population at the end of '96. The early years barely register. The city was growing exponentially, and we had to keep evolving to keep up. Here's where we learned that perimeter control enables growth of civic infrastructure. Due to the accidents of '96, the BLM refused our permit to use the Black Rock Playa in '97. So we moved over the hill to a place called Fly Ranch. It had a hot springs, a geyser, and a small playa next to it where we could safely burn the man. Fly Ranch gave Black Rock City its first natural protective boundary. There were only 3 roads in. It was our first taste of the advantages of controlling access and controlling driving. We also brought in Rod Garrett that year, a professional architect, as city designer. His plan placed the city inside the edge of the Fly Ranch property, next to the smaller BLM playa. Now let's get a sense of scale. In 1997, we were 10,000 people. Then in 98, we got to return to the Black Rock Playa, where there was more room to plan a striking city. So Rod Garrett evolved the city design into a full half circle. Now the city infrastructure developed rapidly, and we tried new things each year. We put a fence around the entire city. In '99, we started naming the radial streets like a clock face, so you were hopelessly lost less often. And new keyhole plazas, open civic spaces, were added to the Esplanade. 2001, the dark areas reserved for theme camps began to grow. In 2002, we tried using degrees of a circle instead of clock time to name the radial streets. Everyone got hopelessly lost. So we switched back to time after that year. In 2006, we tried thicker blocks with fewer roads. That didn't work. Everyone camped along the street, and the middle of each block was underused. 2011 is pretty well dialed in. The pentagonal fence is now 9.2 miles long, and the living area is over 2 miles across. Now we have 5.6 square miles of city. In 2016, we tried an experiment parking cars at the back edge of the city. We wanted to make more room for interactive theme camps in town. The parking area soon became a magnet for human waste. Now it's back to a no parking zone. What would San Francisco or New York do differently if they could iterate like this? And what more could we possibly learn? We've learned how to clean up after ourselves so well that the BLM uses our standard for other events. Burning Man is the largest leave no trace event in the world. By the year 2000, we were analyzing the trash left behind in order to devise new participant cleanup guidelines. First, we named our enemy, MOOP, means matter out of place. On the playa, that means anything that does not tan dust. We pick it all up. We learned that a picture is a powerful motivator. In 2006, we published the first MOOP map to visually show the effectiveness of participants' cleanup efforts in their camping areas. The annual unveiling of the MOOP map has become a big deal, with people anxiously waiting to see how well their camp and their neighbor's camp measured up. 2017, peer pressure is a wonderful thing. Look at that. A decade later, the map is much more green. By the year 2000, we had changed our location, our layout, our access, our habits, and our culture. 2000 closes our era of civic and organizational development. We're so good at the event now that we look outward and teach others what we've learned. Some of what we learned was the 10 principles. Our regional network was growing fast. These are smaller Burning Man-style events led by other people in their local areas. To help maintain their feel of Burning Man, we isolated 10 principles that define our success. It's emergent, not dogma. It's just an explanation of what grew organically in Black Rock City. Today, it guides the entire regional's network and gives us a framework for analyzing our philosophy. There are now more than 80 regionals in 34 countries: Spain, China, Korea, Australia, Argentina, and more. In fact, the fastest growing region seems to be in places that have struggled with culture clash for generations. This is Midburn in Israel. And there's Africa Burn near Cape Town, South Africa. Here's some more outreach. Our nonprofit relief organization, Burners Without Borders, was created when news of Hurricane Katrina reached the event and spread by word of mouth. A relief effort was mounted on ply, which raised $35,000. And at the end of the event, volunteers donated semi-trucks with food, camping supplies, tools, and equipment. They left the ply and headed for the Gulf Coast. There they applied methods learned in the desert. They rebuilt a Buddhist temple, gifted supplies, fostered community, and activated personal networks to get heavy equipment donated in a way that FEMA never could. Solar panels left over from Burning Man 2007 were used to launch BlackRock Solar. BlackRock Solar was the first 501c3 nonprofit solar company in the United States, building free systems for schools, tribal centers, and hospitals in northern Nevada. This was also great. We were really looking out at the world now and wanting to help change it. So what could go wrong? Scarcity. In 2011, tickets to the Burning Man event sold out for the first time ever. The Blackrock Desert could easily host 1 million people. But getting there and back is the bottleneck. Highway 447 is only one lane in each direction. That's one of the reasons that the BLM has always stipulated a 70,000 person cap on our population in our permit to rent the Burning Man site. In 2011, we reached that cap. It was a rite of passage for the entire organization. Human psychology is strange. The moment something becomes scarce, hoarding begins. If you only needed one ticket, you'd buy 2, just in case. Even if you always thought that Burning Man sounded stupid, suddenly you had to go. Now everyone wants in. It's become a quest for the golden ticket. 75,000 possible people, but twice that many requesting access. In an attempt to be as fair as possible, to give old-timers and newcomers, the rich and the poor, all the same chance to get a ticket, we tried a ticket sale by lottery. It didn't work well. Too many of the tickets were won by newcomers. Not enough of the people who create the event could attend. We scrambled to resolve the problem, creating a program to direct tickets to key experienced people. That curated ticket program still exists. About 35% of our tickets are distributed that way to adjust the ratio of experienced versus new participants, to improve enculturation. There's one other problem with scarcity. No matter how devoted you are to the Burning Man principle of decommodification, scarcity raises the cost of access. Scarcity favors those who can pay ticket scalpers more for access. It disfavors the starving artists and the creatives who've devoted time and energy to creating the culture. Many new wealthy arrivals are used to buying all-inclusive vacation packages. They figure out that's how you do Burning Man too. This gave rise to the plug-and-play camps, which we are working on now to mitigate. Exclusive, isolated camps where hired staff serve every whim are the antithesis of why we go out to the desert. There's no personal challenge in being pampered. There's no transformative experience. Enculturation and education of new people will be one of the biggest challenges moving into the future. That red triangle there is the potential zone of danger. It's the place where the unenculturated outnumber their host. It's the point at which it looks less like immigration and more like invasion. Will our unique culture survive? Another danger looming on our horizon is the strangulation of our temporary autonomous zone at the hands of government control and regulation. One of the creators of the Babylon Project, a skinless steel tower, told me his motivation was to prove that you could put up a safe 10-story building in 1 week if government regulations didn't interfere. We're missing a slide here. The future of Burning Man may lie in Fly Ranch. There are many possible uses that we can use with this 3,800-acre facility, if you will. It's a rich environment, populated with all kinds of wildlife, greenland, wetlands, geothermal wells. Some of the uses that it could be used for: experimental events, artistic interventions, sustainability laboratory, education and conferences, spiritual retreat, the world's most beautiful power plant, spaceport, change management institute. The next iteration is about to happen. There's the slide I was looking for. 3,800 acres of wetlands, hot springs, sage, and grazing area. Stunningly beautiful. Solar, wind, it begs for innovative uses. And we welcome your ideas. Thank you.